don't fall. Hey FTM Fantastic, my name is Luke, and this week we are talking about choosing a surgeon. I don't really know what to say, not because I don't have anything to say, but just because I am posting at the end of the week, and once it gets to the end of the week, with some topics, it gets kind of repetitive. Like, there's no point me talking about, all the things you need to think about when choosing a surgeon, because literally like a good 9 other people have already talked about it. I guess I just wanted to sort of try and take it from a different angle and talk about something that's linked, but not necessarily exactly that. And that is accepting that your transition is going to be different to what it might be on the internet with other people, and comparing your transition to other people's transition. I guess something that really sort of triggered this conversation was I was actually Skyping with Presley, and I realized I know more American top surgeons off the top of my head than I do Australian top surgeons, which is strange because I am in Australia. You would think that I would know more about the surgeons in Australia than I do in America. And I was like, why do I know this? Why do I know more American surgeons when I'm not there? I was never going to have surgery with them. And then it sort of made me realize that transition online is very focused on sort of America, Canada, North America region-ish. And I don't mean this in a bad way, so please, Americans, Canadians, whoever, don't get angry at me, and I don't mean this in a bad way, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't be allowed to broadcast your transition or anything like that, but I guess for me, as someone who's in a country that is not the typical trans YouTube narrative countries, it can be very confronting thinking that your transition is going to go a certain way because you expect it to go a certain way, because on the internet and in America it does it this way, and then it's not being completely like this at all. One thing that happened with me, I suppose, and this is like really random and really insignificant, and I don't know why I was so hung up about it, but I really was for some reason when I was pre-T, watching people going on T and like seeing that they had their little vial of tea and expecting when I go on T to have my vial, and I was gonna like collect them, or I don't know, whatever I was gonna do with the vials. I don't know what I was gonna do with the vials, honestly. In Australia we don't get little vials of tea. We have tea that comes like this, and our tea is like a little injection, and it's a preset dose, and it's like you get a packet of 3 of these in a little box, and that's that. Not that that's a bad thing. I don't have any problem with that tea or anything like that at all, but it was a bit almost like it was almost like an anticlimax, because I was expecting it to be a certain way, and I was expecting it to be like, oh, I'll get my tea and I'll get my little vial and it's gonna be like this, and I need an alcohol swab, and then I've got to aspirate, and oh yeah, or maybe I'll switch to subcutaneous injections, and all like all the things that's talked about, and that's not offered here, and like that's completely fine. Now that there are more people on YouTube broadcasting their transition, there's less of this whole like one surgeon, one transition dominated thing. When I was first realizing I was trans, when I was first watching YouTube like transition, when I first realized that like transition was a thing and that you could be trans, I honestly thought that the only surgeon that was there was Garamony, because at the time the only people who were on YouTube, or like the people who like had some sort of following or like was somewhat popular on YouTube that was like somewhere into that, like further into their transition, had double incision, and most of the time, like not everyone, but a lot of people had surgery with Garamony. So in my head, I thought that the only surgery option was double incision. My only option for top surgery would be to fly to America, have double incision, which is a procedure that I never really was keen on. I kind of was a bit like, oh well, like, I don't really want this, but if it's the only option, I guess I'd rather that than like not have a flat chest, so double incision it is. And I guess it's just interesting sort of thinking back about that and thinking about how I expected it to be such a certain way. And like when you Google like top surgery reveal, it's like 90% of them are from Garamony, and there's no problem with that. I have no problem with that. And like Garamony pumps out like a good, like I think he does like 5 surgeries a day, like that, something ridiculous like that. It's very easy to get caught up in these perceived notions of what you think your transition is going to be and what it's going to include, and and that can happen with surgeries, where you might have it dead set sure that you're gonna have surgery with Dr. Garamony and it's gonna be double incision, or you're gonna have double incision, and that might not necessarily be true. You might not need that. I saw people who have commented or spoken to me on Tumblr, reached out to me and communicated with me in some way, basically being like, thank you so much for talking about your transition, because I'm an Australian trans person, and I honestly thought that I had to go to America for top surgery, because no one talks about transition in Australia, or like people do, but like it's not as huge a thing as in the West. I'm gonna use the West from now on, just to like clarify. I don't mean to like lump everyone together. It's easier for you guys to travel amongst it, even if you are in Canada or Mexico or like wherever. It's easier for you to actually like fly up and go to Garamony if you were to, or like I don't even know. You know what I mean? It's very different being in a country that's not in the West and realizing that you're trans and going on and searching transgender or searching FTM top surgery and getting nothing but American results, and thinking that there is honestly no option for you in your country. There probably is. You've just got to research, and that's very difficult, especially when literally if you search, it's kind of hard to find specific surgeons because a lot of the time stuff that's not relevant to you kind of comes up. Like, there's nothing wrong with the fact that transition seems to be very skewed in a certain way, but just know that there are other options. They might not necessarily be as visible, they are there. Even when it comes to like surgeries that might not necessarily be considered the typical double incision, which is seen everywhere. I don't know too many people who have had a procedure that is not double incision, and like, there's nothing bad about that. And because of that, people seem to think that any other procedure isn't necessarily right, or that you shouldn't have that procedure because you're meant to have double incision and that's sort of what you're meant to do. And that's not true at all. Go with what you think is good for your body and what your surgeon think is good for your body. I specifically chose my surgeon because I knew my surgeon did both double incision and peri, so I could be like, okay, well, this is what I want. And he could be like, okay, you should do this one, or you should do that one. And I would just have to be able to stay with him instead of him being like, oh, well, I only do double incision, so, and telling me that like I shouldn't do peri because like double incision is better, and then me having to have a procedure that I might not necessarily want because he's not comfortable doing it, but he still wants to do my surgery. So it's like, I don't know. I guess just the moral of my like random, long-winded, confusing video is that just because it's not typical or what you might commonly see online doesn't necessarily mean that it is any less valid or any less possible. In fact, I encourage people who have had other options or done things that might not be the typical way to do it to come out and talk about it. That's why I'm very open about having peri, and why I try and crush all the myths, all the wrong things that people say about peri, and kind of like try and tell people off, you know, for like spreading misinformation, because misinformation is bad. People get this perceived idea that they can't do a certain procedure, and then when someone goes, oh, actually your body's perfect for this, you should do this procedure, then being like, actually no, I don't want to, I'm going to stick with double incision because everyone tells me that if I do peri, I'm going to get a nipple on my shoulder. Yeah, I've been talking for a really long time now, and so I'm just going to leave now. I have asked for people to just sort of send me any questions if they've got any questions about peri. So if you have any questions, feel free to like ask me them down below. I'll just like collect them and I'll do like a big Q&A thing, because I think it needs to be seen as a more valid option and people don't need to be scared of it as an option. This is completely different. This is like misinformation, which is like another, that's a whole different, that's not for here. Make the right choice for you, go with your gut feeling, make sure you know what you're doing, and just good luck for anyone choosing who they want to have surgery with, because it's a difficult decision and it's an important one, and I hope you make the right decision for you and you don't base that around preconceived ideas of what you need to have done because of other people or what you have seen. What's best for you might not be what's best for the majority of the YouTube trans community, or might not be what the majority of the YouTube trans community did. Good luck, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.